Hey Craftiana, so in today's video I'll be showing you how I made this little peekaboo wine glass. Well, not necessarily a peekaboo, but it's red on the inside and it's gold glitter on the outside with a nice rhinestone trim. So for my products, the actual wine glass, it came from the Dollar Tree, the tree that's $1, my favorite store. For my spray paint, I used the Rust-Oleum High Gloss. The shade is Majestic Red. For my glitter, I used this holographic goldish glitter, and I believe it came from Temu. Craftiana. For my glue, I use Mod Podge for my glitter. For my rhinestones, I use the Royal Glitz Diamond Glue. And for my epoxy, I use the Flynn Sisters Fast Set Epoxy. So let's get right into it, Craftiana. Okay, Craftiana, so first I'm going to start off by taping off my wine glass. Now, I got this painter's tape. It came with like 8 different sizes. I got it off Amazon. You can check my description box and find it under wine glass and tumbler supplies if you want it, okay? So I'm going to create a V section. I'm making a V, so I'm placing my first strip of tape and I'm placing it slightly diagonal on this wine glass. And I'm making sure I press it nice and firm because I don't want no paint getting up under that tape, okay? Don't want those issues, don't want to have to clean up later. So if we do it right now, we won't have to go back and do it later, okay, Craftiana? So I'm going to take another piece of tape and I'm just going to snip, okay? And I'm going to cross that. I'm making sure it's long enough to cross that piece at the bottom to create an actual cross and V. So I'm making sure I have it nice and even pretty much on both sides. I want the diagonal strips to be pretty much even and symmetrical. Now, how big and how wide you want your V is totally up to you. How low you want it to go, it's all personal preference. Now I'm going to take my craft knife and I'm just going to slice that diagonally where those 2 points meet to create that very sharp point. Then I'm going to turn it over to this other side, and as you can see where the 2 tapes meet, and I'm just going to slice that diagonally and make sure I slice it really well. And I'm just going to peel this excess tape up, Craftiana, okay? Because we want to make sure we create a nice sharp point. This is our foundation and we need that nice right and tight, Craftiana, okay? Then I'm going to take another piece of this painter's tape and I'm going to put a strip from the back to back, from tape to tape, not from the inside of the V, not from the inside of the V, but from the back portion. So from this first tape all the way across to the other side of the tape. So excuse me, I'm making sure I just put a thin sliver, not a huge gap, just enough where I could retape it and make sure my epoxy cover that that little portion. I forgot what I was about to say, Craftiana. I be getting distracted sometimes. I'm sorry, homie. I'm sorry, homegirl. I'm sorry. But we're making sure we leave a little sliver so when we go to epoxy, it has something to cover. We want our glitter fully covered and encased in epoxy. So doing this ensures that it's fully closed in and fully covered, and also so our epoxy won't go into our wine glass because I retape it off every time I go into my epoxy. So now I got that fully taped off. Now I am spray painting this first, so I'm going to cover up this middle section, this inside V. I'm going to take some thicker painter's tape. I'm just going to make sure I cover that really well and make sure I keep it in the confines of that V. I don't want it outside of that because if I spray paint it with that outside, it's going to have a little blank space, and we don't want no bald headed, no raggedy patches, okay? We want neatness and we want our shape to look right, okay, Craftiana? We need it luscious and lovely, okay, when we spray paint that red. And I make sure I just press it down very, very well because once again, we don't want that spray paint up under this tape. We want it where we want it and not under there. So I'm taking that painter's tape and just pressing it down and covering it completely. Now, Craftiana, be sure when you're working on wine glasses, take your time, okay? If you have to readjust your tape for your V to get it right, it don't always happen on the first time. Readjust it and just reposition it until it's a shape you like, but you want them even as possible. You don't want one V down to the left where it's starting to look like an L. So just take your time and reposition it. So I got my tape I got my wine glass pretty much all taped off. I'm just going around, make sure everything is pressed down nice and lovely. And we about to go head outside and we're going to spray paint this bad boy, okay? So I'm taking my Rust-Oleum, I was about to say clear. It's a glossy red spray paint. And I'm making sure I just spray paint this really, really well. Now, don't be like me. Spray paint a little further away. Hold the can back a little further away. And I just did one heavy coat. I usually do 2 coats and just build the coverage up like you're supposed to, but I did one heavy coat. So I let that fully dry first, and then I pull all that tape off. And you see we have a nice clean shape. Now I'm taking some Mod Podge and I'm just glittering this in sections, because somehow Mod Podge, it just like it likes to dry faster on spray paint. So I'm just glittering this section by section. I'm laying some glue down and dumping the glitter directly on top of that. So I'm making sure I stay within those lines, and I'm covering this red completely with the glitter. This is just, we don't want that glitter to be seen from the outside. I mean that red to be seen from the outside. We're doing this so when we take our little foam out of our little holder, you'll be able to see the red through the inside of the cup and out the outside. The outside will be gold, the inside will be coat. So I did the first coat, let that completely dry for at least a good 20 minutes, but whatever it takes, let it fully dry. Now I'm going in with the second coat of glitter, Craftiana. So once again, I'm taking my Mod Podge. I used the gloss Mod Podge, but you could use gloss or matte, it don't matter, because once you epoxy, it's going to shine. But I'm making sure I keep the shape right, make sure I stay in them lines, taking this little flat brush. This little flat brush came from Walmart, excuse me, and I'm making sure I keep these lines right, pressing that glue all around. So once I got that fully coated, I'm going to dump that glitter right back on that. So I ended up doing 3 coats of glitter, but I only showed you 2, but I did 3 coats of glitter. So I let that fully dry, put another coat on it. Now it's time to epoxy, Craftiana. So we're going to tape this off again. So I do have a more fully in-depth detailed tutorial on how I epoxy my wine glasses and tape them off. So you can go check out that video on my page. It's the white wine glass. That should be a full in-depth tutorial, but I'm just retaping this off with some electrical tape, and I'm just going to snip this at the top. I'm making sure I leave a nice thin border in between that glitter and that tape, just enough where it covers that, the epoxy covers that edge of glitter really well, and encases that fully, but not to where it's all over the wine glass. We don't want epoxy on this blank wine glass, on this middle part, on this little window. I don't know what to call it. We're going to call it the window. We don't want epoxy all over there. So we're just making sure it's enough to keep a little sliver of space in between. So just ever so slightly of space, because we want that nice and cover and enclosed. We don't want no rough spots. We want everything smooth. So I'm going to take this electrical tape up at the top. Remember I said we tape this off and leave that thin sliver, so we're going to tape that back off to the same way we taped it off in the beginning. We're taping it off right when we epoxy. Excuse me, Craftiana. Let me tell you why the post office had fired me. That's a story time for another day. But I just got irritated again thinking all about it. And this happened a few years ago, but they done just ticked me off. Because why would they fire me and it wasn't even my fault, Craftiana? But I got to tell you that story another day. I'm sorry. I get distracted sometimes. That supervisor had a so anywho, I'm making sure this tape is well done, laid down well. Oh my goodness. So I mixed up 20 milliliters of epoxy, and I'm just spreading this all over. I'm making sure I get all these edges and all the little details and crooks and nannies of that tape. I want that line covered fully, and I'm making sure I just use a light hand. I'm not pressing firmly, and I'm just dragging this all over. Now you don't want to put too much epoxy on here where it's dripping off, but you need enough where your finger glides over it all smoothly. Okay, so you want to take your time. Well, actually I'm using a fast set epoxy, so my time is limited that I have to work. So it depends on what type of epoxy you're using. Every epoxy is made different, Craftiana. Know what you're working with. I am using the Flynn Sisters Boutique. I should have said that in the beginning. Yeah, because I'm going to do an intro. So that should be in the beginning of the products I use. But I'm making sure I cover this really well. And I'm making sure I hit them edges where that tape is really well. You want to make sure the stem is well. And you want to make sure under this little bulb but bulky part that it's not too much down there. Because epoxy tends to pull up and flood up right there. And down here where this little bell at the bottom of the stem, it tends to collect and pull up. So make sure you're spreading that out and don't have too much down there, because you don't want no big old globs of hardened epoxy right there, because usually it just looks like a big glob and you could tell it's too much, and you have a whole bunch of little bubbles in them little spaces, and you can have lopsided sections, and we don't want that. So we're just thinning out, and I'm making sure I take it over this little ledge and make sure I cover this, because I did glitter that all the way down since I did spray paint that part. If I was usually just doing glitter, I wouldn't take it all the way down there. But since I spray painted it and got the spray paint down there, I didn't want the red showing down there either. So I covered it up in glitter. So I make sure I take that all the way down there and get that rim. So I end up doing 3 coats of epoxy total. 3 coats in total, Craftiana. So this is my first coat. I'm using the Flynn Sisters Fast Set epoxy. So after every 2.5 hours, I put another coat of epoxy on here. I retape it off and do the same process over. So I did 3 full coats of epoxy, and then I let that fully dry before I move on to my next part, okay? 3 coats, Craftiana. 3 coats is what I did, but you epoxy until it's smooth. So here it is. After I put it, my epoxy on there, I'm taking my torch and I'm just lighting that to pop any air bubbles. You want to keep that fire moving, Craftiana. So I'll show you what I do in the next part. Whoop whoop. So this is my 3rd coat of epoxy and it's spinning. So I pull my tape off immediately. I forgot to mention that. I pull my tape off immediately after I'm done working on a Craftiana. So as soon as I finish epoxy, and I pull it off immediately. But that's because I'm using a fast set. If I was using a normal set, I would let that sit on longer. So I'm just taking some paper towel and I'm just wiping the inside and wiping this front of this glass, okay? Just getting the dust out. Pull my epoxy right. And this is after fully dried, okay? Now I'm going in with my glue and I'm putting a strip of glue and I'm going in with this SS16 Seam Rhinestone, okay? Seam, like you see them in, but now you don't, okay? And I'm just going along this border and I make sure to cover this edge with this rhinestone. And I'm just giving it a nice little trim, a little pop of color, a little red to match the inside of this, just to tie it together a little bit. You can put whatever color you want, Craftiana. So monkey see, monkey do. You got to do it to the other side to make it match too. And as you can see, I put my first rhinestone down there at that point. I started from the point and worked my way up. And that will give you the best results to have it even on both sides and make sure you hit that point, because you want that point nice and sharp and you want to make sure it meets that point. And if you run the risk from starting to the top, it might not fully meet that point where you need it to be. So I will recommend starting from that point. So here's the finished product, Craftiana. Get into it. It came out so cute. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Follow me on all my social medias. Brand So Crafty. Same name on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. All over the place. Thank you for watching, Craftiana, and being so supportive, homegirl and homeboy. I know it might be a few men out there. I don't know. I really appreciate it. Bye-bye.